treat, and then also coaching. If people want coaching, I'll talk about that.
Okay, perfect.
Are you gonna pull up your event, Tanjila? Are
yes,
you doing
and then could we play the what is it called? The Ascension of the Soul video as well, either at the beginning or at the end, since this is part of an interview series for that.
You know what? Send it to me. Let me play it since I've got better internet than either of you.
Okay,
Okay,
you have it, but I'll send it to you again.
Send it to me again. Okay. So welcome to our friends that are in the Zoom room. I see we've got a few friends that have joined us. Mark and Dorina, Karen, Kathy, Mary Beth, Nancy, Omashar, Sylvia, and Nitya. So thank you, everybody. It's great to be witnessed. I don't know what they have planned to do today.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you guys here. We're excited to be getting a chance to turn the tables on Scott Katamas here and do a deep dive and answer some of your burning questions about who is the man behind the host of the Global Peace Tribe.
And put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A and we'll read them. So definitely, yes. Okay.
Great. So should we just get started? And
we're recording, we're live on Facebook, so let's do it.
Perfect. So, well, Scott, of course, does not need any further ado, as you guys get to see him every week hosting many shows. But if you did not know, Scott has had a very successful career as a writer, director, and producer of educational programming, where he won multiple Emmy Awards and reached millions of people through his productions. And he actually has a lot of amazing stories of working with celebrities from Whoopi Goldberg to Jane Fonda over those years. So maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. And then Scott also worked with many leaders in the New Thought field. And I know, Scott, you can talk more about this, but I think you had some of the first shows about extraterrestrials or galactics. And he's worked with everyone from Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Ram Dass, and he was actually so impressed with the transformational power of all of the tools that these teachers were utilizing that he shifted into becoming a full-time life coach and teacher himself. So since 2007, Scott has facilitated over 1,000 classes, events, and workshops, and has personally coached over 300 individuals, couples, families, and businesses around the world. And he had created the Love Coach Academy, where he trains other relationship coaches through online classes. And he has a vast and ever-growing online library of relationship videos, and actually a couple of exciting relationship courses that he'll be launching in 2022 and in 2023, which we're going to get to hear about. And then when the pandemic hit, Scott immediately put together a full slate of free online programs with senior love coaches and partnered with Deborah Giusti to create Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe, which became a widely popular online inspirational variety show. And then he started the new online series, The Awakening World, which all of you watch and love, and we're all excited to be a part of. And his guests have included so many famous thought luminaries, including Marianne Williamson, Michael Beckwith, Greg Braden, and musical artists such as Deborah Pramal. So, Scott, welcome. You have such an incredible background and history, and we're just so excited to have you here with us today to be able to learn more about the man who's always interviewing everyone. We're excited to do a deep dive with you and learn more about your history, your story, and what's next.
Yes, Scott Katamas, ladies and gentlemen, he is dedicated 3 nights a week or 3 days. He is at it. I don't know, for the past over 2 years, he's been at this. And I don't know how you do it. 1 Zoom a day will just exhaust me, 1 Zoom a week. And Scott, you are driven by a mission. It's not obviously it's not the money, it's not the fame, it's the mission to get the Global Peace Tribe, the word of consciousness, out to as many people in our community and beyond our community. So I've known Scott for 33 years, 1989, I'll tell the story a little bit. I'm sleeping in a tent in Maui at a place called Haleakua. I've just gotten finished with New York working in film production. I wanted to take a vacation from film production, and Scott and his film crew rolls up onto this piece of land. And I said, what are you doing? And, we're making a movie. Do you want a job? And I said, well, I just got out of film. And he goes, we'll give you a job as assistant director and we'll pay you for living on Maui and having a beautiful time. So I said, wow, you're going to pay me for living on Maui and working on a great film. And ever since then, we keep running into each other. We ran into each other in Australia. Everywhere we seem to be in, it's our circle, it's our community, it's our great. And Scott has been on the job. I mean, I know Marshall Rosenberg was a huge influence on Scott, nonviolent communication, that really set you off in another direction. But can you talk a little bit about your origins? Like, what were your early spiritual experiences? What got you on the path of awakening? That's what I want to know.
Okay, well, I'll talk about different stages, and thank you both for your beautiful introduction. It's very touching. Thank you. And all three of us, I want to say, do share right now, we're all three dedicated to raising consciousness. And I really appreciate all that you do, Alan, through New Realities, all that Tanjila does through Soul Search, and really our collaborating with both of you has been a really big part of the last couple of years. And we're all together reaching as many as we can, and hopefully really increase the number of people that we reach. So, as
one interruption there, the people say the chat is disabled. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, it shouldn't be.
Go to the Q&A. It says chat.
Okay, let me enable chat.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.
It's right now,
great.
kids.
Okay, great. Yes.
So I was literally born on Christmas Day, and there was a lot of hoopla around it. My mother always wanted to have a son, and she had had two daughters and had gone 10 years without being pregnant. She was now 38. And back in those days, 38 was old for having a baby. Not now, but back then it was. And this is my mom's story. She's very Christian. She loved Jesus. And she had a dream, and Jesus came to her and told her that she was going to have a baby boy who was going to be born on Christmas Day. And sure enough, she got pregnant, and sure enough, I popped out on Christmas Sunday, no less. She always used to brag that she went to church in the morning and gave birth to me in the afternoon. That was something my mother was very proud of. And so I really did grow up with a Messiah complex. And I thought as a little boy, it was up to me to save the world. And I actually started getting really stressed out about it. In fact, by the time I was around 9 years old, my parents had to take me to the doctor because I was having anxiety and the beginnings of an ulcer, because I was trying to figure out, how can I save the world? Wow. And on my 10th birthday, something happened, and I don't remember the details very much, other than I was praying. Back then I was, even as a 10-year-old, I was praying. I was just praying to, help me, God. This is too big. I can't do it. I can't save the world. I'm just a little boy. And all I remember, I was in the backyard. I was with my dog, and a figure came to me. And he was East Indian, but in my memory as a 10-year-old, it was just like this kind of exotic man came. I'm pretty sure it was Paramahansa Yogananda. Now, when I was 10, I had no idea who Yogananda was. I discovered him when I was 16. Pretty sure it was Yogananda. And I don't remember what happened other than it was lifted. It was like, after that, the anxiety was gone, the worry was gone, the drive to still play my role, to still be of value stayed. But this idea that I had to save the world was gone. And I pretty quickly caught on that this time it's everybody. One Jesus, one Buddha, it's Tanjila, and it's Ellen, and it's Karen Eisenberg, and Kent, and Mary Beth, and there's all of us playing our role, whatever our role might be. So that was my first big one. Since we're going to go deep and be honest, my next big one was when I first took LSD. And I first took LSD with my best friend, Richard. We were 16, and we had a wonderful trip. We left our bodies. We were both out of our bodies and looking down at ourselves. And it was really cool to have an out-of-body experience while my best friend was also having an out-of-body experience. And up there, we were able to talk about what we were seeing down there. It was a really lovely, peaceful way to do that. And very, just really wonderful, really. I mean, you know, so many people have had out-of-body experiences, but it's connected to a car accident or dying or, you know, something hard. And for us, it was just two kids tripping on acid. But it was a great trip. And while we were out there, we remembered a lot. We remembered that we're multidimensional beings, that we're here to learn to love. And we kind of fell in love with ourselves, not with each other, but with ourselves. And when we kind of came back into our bodies, we had another stage that night where we just looked in the mirror and saw beauty, saw good things. And it really anchored in very healthy self-esteem. So that was my next big awakening. 5 years later, the next big one, I'm now 21. I've started a professional theater company. We're very successful. Whoopi Goldberg is working for us, but back then she's not Whoopi Goldberg. She's Karen Johnson, just an angry Black woman, angry Black chick who's doing stand-up comedy in the evenings under this new name of Whoopi Goldberg. And a lot of other amazing people are working for me. And I had an encounter with a very dark force. And I won't go into details unless you want to, because it's a story, but it was a very scary encounter. And honestly, I never believed in the devil, but I found myself alone in nature with a friend of mine, a human being who literally turned into a demonic, satanic force. And I've never thrown a punch in my life. I've always been a flower child, peace person, and it was a really scary moment. And I called upon for help, and I was filled with Christ consciousness. Now, I want to be very clear. I wasn't Jesus. In fact, it didn't really have much to do with Jesus. It was instead an experience of being filled with Christ consciousness. And I went from being terrified of this being to having tremendous compassion. And as that shifted into compassion, he went from being a threat to softening is part of it, but also just wanting to be loved. It was an amazing, again, moment in my life of teaching me the power of compassion. So that was my next big awakening.
But that seems like such a key point for you, Scott, because that seems to have set you on the path, right, of compassion.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
absolutely. It did. It set me on the path of compassion, and taught me the power of compassion in what to this day was probably, you know, the most terrifying moment of my life. And so, yeah.
And
So
Scott,
the next
at that point, had you already been studying different spiritual texts, spiritual teachers? Had you already kind of started going down that road?
Yeah, definitely. When I was 16, when I first took acid, that's when I really began to go down the path. And I read Autobiography of a Yogi at 16. After the acid trip, we were both really wanting to get as much information about, okay, wow, we are multidimensional beings. What does that mean? We're spiritual beings and we're having this human experience. What does that mean? And so early books that were influences were Autobiography of a Yogi, Illusions by Richard Bach, Seth Speaks, and the Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts. You know, these were significant books that we read. And I actually went down and had my very first silent retreat in Encinitas at Self-Realization Fellowship. I was either 16 or 17 when I drove down and did that.
Oh, wow. So you were young.
Yeah, I moved out of the house and was self-supporting at age 16.
Mm.
I was declared an emancipated minor.
And
I-
is that something you really felt strongly you wanted to do, and why? Like what kind of, what had you become an emancipated minor and get out on your own so young?
Yeah, so that's the story. Well, I was definitely very type A personality, and very driven. I no longer thought I had to save the world, but around that time, I wanted to be the next Walt Disney. That was my fantasy. And in fact, I actually had a multidimensional experience where I had communication with the spirit of Walt Disney. And that was really cool.
Mhm.
And in that, at that point, I had started my theater company. I started that when I was a teenager. And he shared with me that his great regret, and his regret was that he had been prejudiced, that he had a lot of bigotry and prejudice in the way he had been raised. And he was a John Bircher. He was very conservative. And he kind of had that white, whatever you want to call it, back then. This is like, 50s and 60s when he was in his power. And so I started a theater company with the dedication to it being multicultural and really dedicating ourselves to multicultural understanding. In the theater company, the idea was plays for teenagers, by teenagers, about teenagers. But I made a point to make sure that our casts were integrated. And I really went out of my way to make sure it wasn't just a bunch of white kids, which, I've been up with mostly white kids. But we reached out and very quickly became very multiculturally diverse. So there was, the kind of discovery on the spiritual side while also becoming an adult. And there's a lot that I wanted to do. And so.
Wow, that's amazing that you were so at the forefront of bringing forth this multicultural, unity, these feelings of unity, which you're still doing to this day, even from the very beginning. That's do you feel like that's just been a common thread for you throughout?
And the universe rewarded me. At 18, I started getting grants. We started between the theater company, it was a nonprofit organization. And this is when desegregation was really happening. And the president was Jimmy Carter, who was very liberal and very cool. And I learned how to get federal grants to help with desegregation. And so we got what at the time for an 18-year-old was a lot of money to do plays for teenagers, about teenagers in junior and senior high schools, all about multicultural themes to really understand each other. So we did shows on the Black experience, the Hispanic experience, the Asian experience. We did shows for younger kids on multi-ethnic American leaders.
And where was this happening? Where was the theater that you were working out of?
We were all touring. This was a tour. In fact, we became a few years later the largest touring company in the country. It was all, we went professional. We were an equity touring company. And I was in Southern California. I was born and raised in Southern California and lived there my whole life up to 40 years old. And then I moved to the Bay Area. So this is all happening in Southern California. And the theater company, when we started getting all those grants, it started expanding. So we opened up a San Diego branch. That's where Whoopi Goldberg, aka Karen Johnson, worked for us. We opened up a San Francisco Bay Area branch. And so we became statewide. And we did some touring outside of California, but 95% of our work was within California. And we did that for many years. And then by the time I was 23, we were taking the stage plays that we were doing in the high schools, and we adapted them for television. And so we were doing them in television as television shows. And that's why, frankly, they were really good. And that's why I won my Emmy Awards, because we were taking plays that we had performed in front of hundreds of thousands of kids, refining it. And look, teenagers are the best audience in the world, because if they don't like you, you know it. right? If it works, they laugh. If it works, you got them. If it doesn't work, you don't get them. And you can tell literally line by line, moment by moment, where you got them, where you're losing them, where you're getting them back. So we got really good at really working with our audiences, fine tuning it. Then we would take these very fine tuned shows, put them on television through PBS initially. And that's what we won our Emmy Awards for. So there's that stage of my life. And a lot of the people that worked for me became quite successful. Brian Stokes Mitchell became a big Broadway star. He was also on the show Trapper John MD. He was one of the regulars. A woman I fell in love with, Anna Alicia, became the star of a TV series called Falcon Crest. And many of the other people who worked for us went on to have their own TV shows. And several of them are still professional working actors.
Wow. And so then
What show did you win an Emmy for? I'm just curious about your Emmys. What were they?
I won a few, and they were all for educational television. The first one was, our company was called TNRC. And so the first two Emmy Awards were for TNRC Presents. And then the third one was for a special that I did called Name That Label, which again was all about how we label people and the inherent prejudice of labeling people and predetermining who people are based on the color of their skin or their race or their gender or their culture. We even were beginning to deal with sex positive programming, which actually leads into the next stage when I met Alan, which is the movie that I made.
That's right.
And the movie that I made was a movie called Men in Love. And there's an interesting story about that, since it leads into meeting Alan. So I was on vacation in Maui about a year before Alan was there, but I was at the same place, Haleakua, which is a very magical place. And
it means house of the divine, Haleakua, and it is a divine place. It is. It's a fantastic. Yeah.
And I was on vacation there, but I carried my typewriter with me. That was back in the days when we didn't have computers, we had typewriters, and my little portable typewriter with me. And I woke up one morning and I was just filled with Holy Spirit. And I sat down at my typewriter and I wrote a story. And I started it at 7 o'clock in the morning and I finished it at 7 o'clock at night. And the story was called Men in Love. And it was about the AIDS crisis. And I'm not gay, but I had a lot of friends that were gay. A lot of the actors who worked for me, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area branch. And I saw what they were going through. And you got to remember, this is back when they were calling AIDS the gay cancer. Prominent religious figures were saying this was God punishing gays for being evil. I mean, it was rugged. And the gay population in San Francisco was really getting decimated. Literally every weekend there was a funeral going on. And I just saw it with so much compassion. And so Spirit came through me. I wrote this story. I wrote it in July. By November, we had raised $1 million to make a movie out of it. And back then, $1 million was a lot of money to make an independent movie. We needed it so we could afford Alan Steinfeld when we met him a few months later. December, we started shooting, and we shot in San Francisco first, because the first scenes take place in San Francisco. And then we shot the rest of it in Maui. And the storyline is a gay man loses his best friend and lover to AIDS. He's completely freaked out. His lover's last request was for his ashes to be spread in Maui at a sacred site where Stephen, the protagonist, the survivor, has to cope with his own fear of getting AIDS and also meeting the other lover of his lover who had died. And so confronting sexuality, confronting spirituality. The movie was, it was homoerotic. You know, I want to make it clear, it was not an X-rated movie. You didn't see that, but it was the very first R-rated movie that showed men naked hugging, men kissing, men doing spiritual ritual together. And it was groundbreaking. in its expression of homoeroticism. And it actually got really good reviews. The New York Times really liked it. The LA Times really liked it. And it was controversial. In fact, Alan might remember, there were people, when we had a screening in Maui, there was a protest. There were people protesting the movie, and I mean, it definitely.
Well, they didn't even want it to be produced. There were too many trucks going down the road. We had to deal with the neighbors. But I also want to say that was a common theme at the time. People did want their ashes spread around Maui. I know another woman who had a friend who it was a genuine real life request. So it wasn't so far out, the basis of that plot. So yes. So go ahead, continue. And what did that do?
That's the thing about that's interesting. And this, what I'm going to tell you is absolute truth. The man who was organizing the anti-Maui, who was trying to stop the production and then trying to stop the film from being released, his name was Joseph Gunsinger. That was his name. On the night that we had our big opening at the Castro Theater in San Francisco, big deal, limousines. And the Castro Theater, for anybody who doesn't know, is like the big theater right in the middle of the heart of the gay community in San Francisco. So it was a big event. That night, Joseph Gunsinger had a massive heart attack and died.
Wow.
The night of our premiere. That's how invested he was, which is a fascinating thing. I mean, I hadn't thought of that story for a while, to be honest, but now you guys got me memory lane. So
that's an amazing story, and amazing that you are, you're really producing this groundbreaking movie at that time. And so when, obviously you never shied away from dealing with, controversial political issues of the time. When did you start actually getting into the consciousness work, more fully working with the teachers? How did that happen as you?
And the transformation of consciousness, I would say, from what I know you, Scott, there were two major points: meeting Marsha Rosenberg, nonviolent, and of course the death of your wife. So that really culminated in this other level of your larger awareness. You want to talk about those two things?
Well, let me talk about Tanjila.
Or is there more in between?
Went through first, yeah, because that's a little bit ahead. That's if we're going to do this chronologically. So Tanjila, after Men in Love, and Men in Love was 3 years of my life. It was writing it, producing it, and then for 2 years I traveled with it, because the marketing campaign became, why did a straight man make this gay movie? And I became a spokesperson for the gay movement. And it was important being straight. And at the time I was married to a beautiful young woman. So it was very clear that I was, a straight man making this movie. So there was that. And then I morphed into what Tanjila asked about, which was really doing more stuff on consciousness. And that's when I went to work for a show called The Other Side. It was a NBC daytime talk show. And it was all about metaphysical, paranormal stuff. And so I was hired as a producer for them, because I knew at that point I had been starting to get really involved in the consciousness field, more on a personal level. I had had my own experiences, out-of-body experiences, some ET stuff. And so I got involved with that show.
What year was that, Scott?
That was in 1994.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did have your own personal ET experiences even prior to that. Wow. And would you like to share, or is that another interview we do with you, your in-depth ET experiences?
Yeah, let's save that for another one. We'll make that.
Alan, we got to take note of that, because I know you're all ears.
It's my favorite subject. Yeah. So we will come back to that at some point in a later show.
So I knew a lot of people in the field. And by that time I was going back and forth between the Bay Area, because I had started a home in both LA and the Bay Area. So from 1994 till around 2001, for 7 years, I worked as a producer or segment producer, sometimes a supervising producer, on 4 different nationally broadcast television shows, all that were around UFOs, metaphysical, and I really became one of the top producers in the world. That became my field. That's what I became famous for. I went from the other side when that got canceled. I went to work for a show called The Paranormal Borderline, which was a primetime TV series. Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek was our host, and I was in charge of all the UFO stories. And that was amazing because I had a big budget. It was a primetime series, and we were reaching millions. So there was that. Unfortunately, that show only lasted for 1 year, but that did lead to me then getting hired as supervising producer for a show called Strange Universe, which was a syndicated show. And I worked on that show for 2.5 years. And then from that, I went into a show called Looking Beyond. So
I know you want to say Strange Universe, Scott, was a breakthrough show. It opened up a lot of the mainstream into all this metaphysical stuff. So it was very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you think shows were ahead of their time, Scott? I mean, all of these shows, I mean, how were they received by the public? And do you really think consciousness was ready for this information at large when you were out there?
Here's what the big difference was about that era, that time. And that time now is late 1990s into early 2000. Up until that time, people in the military who had seen things were absolutely shut down. And people that said too much were either harassed or disappeared. And it changed. And I don't know how or why, but I'll give an example. There was a man named Frank Kaufman, who was the head of the CIC. That was the Civilian Intelligence Corps, which was a forerunner to the CIA. And he was stationed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Now, this is all an interesting story, and it kind of answers your question. He was there when the Roswell crash happened. And because he was the head of the CIC, when the crash first happened, they thought it was a Russian spy plane. Remember that the only atomic bomb squadron in the world in 1947 was the 509th, which was stationed in Roswell, which is why there was so much UFO activity, because they were monitoring, oh, wow, human beings have atomic weapons now. So there was a lot of monitoring. On July 2nd, lightning hit a ship. The ship went down. People were called. They thought it was a Russian spy plane. Frank and other people got there, realized it wasn't a Russian spy plane, but it was indeed extraterrestrial. I was in 1947. For 40 years, 45 years, nobody could talk about it. Anybody who tried to talk about it was shut down. But then now everybody's like pretty old, and I discovered Frank, and I worked with him for 2 years, and he wanted to see how my other programs with other people that were witness that had been children or teenagers when it happened, how things went when I did their stories. And when he saw that they weren't harassed and he liked the quality of my work, he was then dying of cancer. He agreed to tell the story. And he and I went to Roswell with a camera crew. And that story was the very first opening story for Strange Universe. It was a very big deal at the time. And here we were interviewing someone who was a top government official. Then we were able to prove and show his credentials, telling the story of the Roswell crash. And he was not hassled or harassed. But part of his story was how so many people were completely shut down. And so that's what changed, Tanjila. And I think my theory was that kind of the government reached the point of, okay, we're not going to kill people for it anymore. We're going to let these things come out in ways that are still considered counterculture. You know, it's not the president with his arm around a gray alien. It's still counterculture. And if people want to watch it and they want to believe, they can. And if they don't want to watch it, they don't have to. Where there's still the big thing stopping it all from really becoming mass is the Vatican. Okay, the Vatican has tremendous power. And the Catholic Church is at this point what has the most to lose by a public disclosure of our true origins and of our relationship to ET. So I think it's not going to be until the Vatican gives the go-ahead and finds a way to somehow maintain power and maintain a theology and a church that there's going to be resistance, at least where the Vatican has power.
I also think it's corporate America. I think it's the multinationals, the oil companies. Like I say in my book, they're not filling up their gas tank to get here. So that's a whole other discussion, but I appreciate that perspective. So yes.
Yeah.
So,
Have you ever been harassed because of that work or approached
No.
you? No. Okay.
Nothing. Zip. And I mean, I was putting out the most, I mean, we put out really deep and powerful stuff. Nothing. I never got it.
why did Strange Universe go off the air though? What
Oh,
was
it's such a sad story.
Oh.
You talk about corporate stupidity. When it first came out, it was very successful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, kind of after a few years, you know, the charm wore off a little bit and the ratings began to dip. And the company that owned it, a company called Reicher Entertainment, fired the two original creators of the show, who were two beautiful people who really wanted to get real stories out. They actually bought them out, fired them, brought in a guy who knew nothing about any of this. And his job was to increase the ratings by making it more sensational. And literally this, instead of whereas before with Jeff and Margaret, or two executive producers, we would come and would pitch stories. Hey, this is what we've learned. This is what's going on. This is what's happening in Sedona. This is the sighting that's going on in Arkansas. All that changed. This guy came in and he would just grab the National Enquirer, do big red circles around certain stories and say, this is what we're going to do. And actually, and this is something I'm proud of, I wrote a letter, I resigned, and I wrote a letter to all the people I'd worked with explaining a really unfortunate thing has happened. Our original leadership has left, and I can no longer vouch for the integrity of this show. And Reicher, that's where I did get hassled. Reicher threatened to sue me. They didn't. But that's what happened. And of course, there was a brief increase in the ratings because of the sensationalism. And then the show just died because it at first, and it's a good lesson. It's like the sensationalism, we still had our loyal core audience, just like there's a loyal core audience for Global Peace Tribe, right? The people that are with us watching right now. And imagine if we got really sensational and crazy. Well, the loyal core audience is going to stay with it for a month or two because, you know, they're loyal. But then after a while, they're going to go, this sucks. What happened to Scott? What happened to this thing that we love? And the looky-loos also leave and it just falls apart. And that's what happened to Strange Universe.
Well, you know, it was the forerunner of shows like Ancient Aliens, Sightings. There was a bunch of shows that followed that, tried to cash in on that. And now it's huge. If you did this again, I think it would be really successful.
Yeah.
You're doing something else. So
Mhm.
let's keep moving forward because there's so much important stuff to carry in your development. So
Yeah, so during this time, I'm really learning a lot about, because I'm interviewing, and during the good years, I could interview anybody I wanted to. Like if there's somebody I wanted to meet, Whitley Strieber, I just booked an interview with him because I had that level of power. The people that I worked for trusted me that anybody I thought was worth interviewing, they'd give me the go ahead. And that was back in the days when, you know, we had to show up with a camera crew of 4 people and the lights and, you know, editing for $150 an hour in an Avid system. So different than how it's all done. Now it's just done, you know, people on their cell phone. And here we are. I mean, we're all at home or wherever we're visiting, right? But I really got a chance to meet a lot of amazing people. And that's when I met a lot of the people that you now see on Global Peace Tribe. I first met Michael Beckwith 1985, 1986. I started going to Agape when we were meeting on metal folding chairs in the basement of a church in Santa Monica. By the way, Michael's going to be on The Awakening World on September 24th.
Oh, nice.
Coming back. I met Marianne Williamson back then, Neil Donald Walsh back then, a lot of the old timers that you've now seen on Global Peace Tribe I met back in those days. And then now moving into what Alan had referenced, in 2001 is when I met Marshall Rosenberg. And at that point, I had my own production company. And Marshall's company, Marshall, for anyone who doesn't know, is the founder of Nonviolent Communication, also known as Compassionate Communication. And I was hired to do a TV show and a series of videos with Marshall. And my life changed when the way I worked it out, by that time I had my own camera, and I agreed to just travel with Marshall for 3 weeks. We met in Corona, California, which is Southern California. And we traveled over a 3-week period on a tour his people had set up for him, all the way up the West Coast, finishing up in Seattle. And I'm filming everything. Marshall teaching other nonviolent communication teachers, Marshall working with prisoners, Marshall working with the educational industry, Marshall coaching couples and families.
But can you describe what an incredible person Marshall was? Not just what he's, but his person. Yeah. What was that?
Well, Marshall was his genius. And I guess I'll tell the story briefly. And Alan documented this, and you can find it on YouTube.
Right.
His big event in his life was when he was 10 years old. Obviously, he's Jewish, Marshall Rosenberg. He witnessed a group of adult men beating up his father, and Marshall was there watching it because his father was Jewish. And as they're beating him up, we're going to teach the Jew boy a lesson. And imagine the horror of being 10 years old and watching your beloved father get beaten to a pulp because of his last name, and it's the same last name you have. And it set Marshall on his lifetime of wanting to understand how could human beings be like that? How could adult men beat up my father because of a name? And so it took him through really decades of study and anthropology and cultural study and a couple of doctorate degrees. And at the end of that process, by the time he was in his 40s, he had come to realize this powerful understanding that everything we do is an attempt to meet what he calls a universal human need. And we all share a set of universal human needs: the need for safety, the need for connection, the need to be understood, the need for sexual expression, the need for creative expression. And so it was a profound understanding that could be applied to prisoners or to your husband or to your wife. Why is she behaving this way? It's not because she's a bitch. It's because she wants to be understood.
Well,
why is he behaving this way? It's not because he's an asshole. It's because he really wants sexual connection, right? Whatever it is.
But the thing that Marshall said, and maybe you'll get to this, is that people have different strategies for meeting those needs. And that's the big problem.
Thank you. Yeah. So what Alan's pointing to is we don't argue or fight over the universal human need. We fight over the strategy. So the point is, if Tanjila has a strategy to be understood and her business partner has a different strategy to be understood, they're fighting over the different strategies. But if they can recognize they both want to be understood, then they can relax into that's where they can connect. They both want to be understood, right? That's where they can connect. So we can connect with anybody by going underneath the strategy to the universal human needs that are binding us, that we can relate to, right? That was
Was that understanding very transformative for you, Scott, and learning these techniques?
Yeah, because at that point, I'm in my early 40s, and I'm with Suchi, and Suchi lives in the Bay Area, and she really wants me to be in the Bay Area, and I'm going back and forth between being Scott, the producer in LA, and Scott in the Bay Area with Suchi, my wife. She was my wife yet, but we were together. And when I traveled with Marshall for 3 weeks and watched him, I realized, oh my God, this is what changes the world. All my life, I've been wanting to change the world. And Marshall taught me, if you want to change the world, change your relationships, right? We all want to change the world in a big way, but we have no impact over Putin. We have no impact over Trump or Biden. We don't. But we have tremendous impact over our relationships. And Marshall taught me that. And the humility of, yes, be an activist, but tend to your own household first, right? Tend to your own. And that's where he taught me that dynamic, and he taught me how to do it, right? He had the tools for doing it. And I saw that it worked everywhere, from highly educated people to convicted felons in prison. It worked everywhere. And that was a big turning point. And by that time, I was getting older, and I'd come out of the really disappointment of what I described about Strange Universe and other disappointments in the entertainment industry. I was getting pretty burned out. And also I was getting older, and young guys willing to do what I wasn't willing to do anymore. And so I transitioned from Scott, the writer, director, producer, to love coach Scott. And that was that transition that took place. And that transition started in 2001. And by 2000, the last big media project I did was a documentary that I made in Cambodia in 2005, 2006. And then by 2007, I was love coach Scott full time. And then the other big thing that happened then that Alan mentioned, of course, was the death of my wife in 2011. And I then started the Love Coach Academy, which I dedicated to her. And that, of course, was a huge, huge event in my life.
Well, how did that actually change your whole perspective to spirit and spirituality when?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Because we were so close, because of the way her death played out, and I know that a lot of people have heard this story before, so thanks for being willing to hear it again. But the part of the story that people might not know is 6 weeks before she died, before she had any symptoms, we were at a memorial service at Harbin Hot Springs. We lived in a house that we bought very close to Harbin Hot Springs, and we were very active in the Harbin community. And a friend of ours had been killed by a drunk driver, and we were at her memorial service. And I'm holding Suchi's hand, and we're kind of in a meditative moment. And all of a sudden I get this complete download, and I see myself vividly leading a memorial service for Suchi at Hot Springs. That took place at the end of October 2011, and she died 6 weeks later.
Wow.
And I apologize, she died 8 weeks later. She got the symptoms began 6 weeks later. She died 8 weeks later.
At that time, there was no indication that she
None,
was
zero. But from that point on, I knew, oh my God, Suchi's going to die, and she's going to die soon. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew it. And 3 weeks after that, she was away, and I woke up to a voice asking me, are you going to be okay? And I knew that it was in reference to, am I going to be okay with this impending death? And my first answer was, yes, I'll be okay. And then all of a sudden she had a headache that got very, very bad, very, very fast. She didn't want to go to the hospital because she wanted to wait so that she could read her, every year she read a poem at Thanksgiving Day at Harbin Hot Springs. It was a big Thanksgiving dinner we always would go to. And she would read her poem on giving thanks. And she really didn't want to go to the hospital until that she could do that. And on Thanksgiving Day, her headache had gotten so bad, she could barely walk. She could barely get out of bed. And she wasn't even going to make it to Harbin. And so the next morning, Friday morning, I took her to the hospital. On the drive to the hospital, she lost consciousness. She never woke up. At the hospital, they did the brain scan and the MRI, and they discovered that she had a glioblastoma that was growing so rapidly that the doctors said she had 48 to 72 hours to live. The blessing of that was that there was no time lost in trying to find a miracle cure. Instead, it was like, oh my God, savor every last hour with her. They released her to let me bring her home. It went out all over Facebook. It became viral that Suchi's dying. Scott's wife, Suchi, is dying. Literally on the drive back from the hospital, by the time I got to my house, there were 50 people waiting for us. And we went into a vigil for her. There's a constant flow of people coming to say goodbye. So all that leads to your question of how it impacted me spiritually. I had tremendous support. I wasn't lost trying to find a miracle cure. I had to accept my wife is about to die. And I did accept it. I did accept it. I wasn't fighting it. And so because I was in that level of acceptance and so connected to her, when she took her final breath, I could feel energetically the incredible liberation of her soul. In fact, there were 11 of us in the bedroom at the time. It was just after midnight. And there were 11 of us there, and we all could feel the liberation of the soul. And that was the great teaching. What's interesting is before that, I used to give sermons. I went through a period of traveling and giving sermons at Unity churches, and my sermons were all about compassion and the power of acceptance. And here I then was taught this incredible lesson of acceptance. But what it taught me was that when we accept even something as unacceptable as my wife dying at such an early age, she was only 52, by accepting it, I was able to experience the beauty of her liberation. Really beautiful. And we all felt it. And
that is a beautiful story, Scott. It's very touching. It brings tears to my eyes. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And as I felt, I mean, I was weeping, you know, I mean, there's the human part of me that was like, oh God, she's gone. And the other part of me like, oh baby, you made it. And I should add, she always wanted to be one with God. That was her whole thing. She was deep into meditation, deep into seeking enlightenment. When I read her private journal after she died that I had never read before, it was all about wanting to be one with God. And she made it. That's how she was one with God. And I did have communication with her after she died. And she's a happy angel, you know? And so really, I'd already had my multidimensional experiences, so I already knew we're multidimensional. But Suchi's death taught me how beautiful death is. You know, there's pain of leaving the body for many people, pain of people left behind. But when we die, we go back home. We go back to the astral plane. We wake up. Oh, wow, I just had an earth dream. I just had this really intense earth life. And it's like that. It's like, just like when we're having an intense dream and we think it's happening, and then we wake up and we realize it's a dream. Well, that's what Suchi shared, is that when we're having an earth life and we die, we wake up and we're back in the astral plane. We're always in the astral plane. Everyone listening right now, we're in the astral plane on a higher level, but we get really locked into our earth life, which is okay. That's part of the plan, part of the way it's supposed to be. And when we die, it's like waking up. Oh my God, I had this incredible earth life. I was Tanjila, and I had all these different cultures, and I created this thing called Soul Search. So it became a worldwide networking thing and changed the world. You know, it's like whatever our earth life dream is. And so it taught me that. And since then, life sends me a lot of people that I'm coaching who are getting divorced, or who are dealing with terminal cancer, who are dealing with big let go. And because I have an integrated understanding of the power of acceptance, and that when a marriage ends, when a job ends, to mourn and to see it as liberation, because that's what it is. You know, it's liberation to our next chapter, our next job, our next relationship, our next stage of life.
Wow. And so,
Long an answer to your question.
no, that's an incredible story. I mean, very touching, very beautiful, and what an incredible lesson to learn. I mean, in a very difficult way, of course, but it's just incredible that you were able to integrate that so fully to bring it forth to others. And so you've had this, you know, thriving coaching practice, which you still have today, Scott. But then how and where did the Global Peace Tribe come through? And you're bringing consciousness out to the world again through your favorite modality of video and television, and you know, but doing it through the internet this time. So, and where do you see this going from here?
But isn't there a little piece between the death of your wife and Global Peace Tribe? Is there like, I mean,
That piece would be, I really went into coaching, a lot of coaching, because everybody knew that Scott's wife died and he handled it seemingly well. What happened is within our community, oh my God, my husband has cancer, let's call Scott. I kind of became coach to a lot of people dealing with death and dying. And that's continued. So there was that. And then there was also sort of the Lift Academy, where I started training other coaches in what I learned from Marshall, what I learned from Tony Robbins, what I kind of picked up along the way. So a lot of teaching online courses, a lot of, at first, I traveled everywhere. I went through a period where I was just traveling and touring and giving sermons or teaching in people's living rooms, teaching where anybody wanted to have Scott talk. And then in 2015, there was a big fire that burned Harbin Hot Springs down. And Harbin was where I had been doing my retreats, where I taught my classes, where people came to see me often. And this fire comes along, completely wipes out Harbin, wipes out a lot of the houses near me. And it really was the start of wildfire season as an annual big experience here in California. And I shifted from going and meeting people to going online. I realized, okay, we're going into an online world. I need to shift into an online presence. And I got really, really good at teaching online courses, coaching people by Zoom, and switched to an online guy. That's in 2015, 2016 that I made that transition after the big fire. Well, that led to when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. I was involved in fundraising. I've always done fundraising all my life, going back to the theater company. And Deborah Giusti and I were going to do a fundraising event for our friend Fantuzzi. And he has Lyme's disease, longtime friend. I've known Fantuzzi for 30 years. And so we're going to do a live event at Deborah's house. And then the pandemic happened and everybody, had got shut down. The lockdown happened. And so Deborah actually had the idea, what if we turn this into an online fundraising event? And I said, sure. And so she and I collaborated on a fundraiser for Fantuzzi. We did it on a Saturday night, the last Saturday night of March 2020. We had some friends come in and play music online, and people really liked it. And people said, wow, while we're shut down, while we're locked down, let's do this. Would you guys be willing to do it? And so Deborah and I thought, yeah, it's kind of fun. We're community leaders. And we really thought it was going to last a month, maybe 2 months. So we committed to on Saturday nights, having some friends come together online. And then we came up with a name. Actually, I came up with the name Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe. And then we started, and it started to grow. And we were the first kids on the block to do something regular like that in the pandemic. So we had a big audience. Our Zoom rooms, we grew quickly. Often we would have over 1,000 people, would be full. And then we started getting, people like Deepak Chopra coming on, Marianne Williamson coming on, Michael Beckwith coming on, because they were all in lockdown. They also had, they went from on a Saturday being teaching somewhere to being in their pajamas in the living room with nothing to do. So we were able to get them on the show. And we really went into, and it grew, and we made a bit of a business out of it. And then we started getting sponsors, and we did Saturday Night Live for the Global Peace Tribe for a year and a half. But then the pandemic wound down, people started going out again, people got zoomed out. There were 10,000 other options of things to do on Zoom. Deborah burned out, and she really needed to kind of withdraw and take care of her health. Now, in addition to doing the Saturday Night Show with Deborah, I had also been doing my Straight Talk show every Friday night with Trish that Alan was frequently on, right, and my Sacred Sunday show that I did just by myself with whoever I wanted to invite. And I had been doing that really from the start of the pandemic as well. I started that pretty quickly. And so when Deborah kind of retired, I decided to bundle all three of those shows together under the banner of The Awakening World, which we kicked off in January. And then when Deborah left, then I started inviting other co-hosts. And one of my favorite co-hosts is Alan Steinfeld. My favorite co-host is Tanjila. And of course, other co-hosts that you see me work with, like Kristen Hoffman and Louisa Stowe.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful, yeah. Great. But the Global Peace Tribe was something that continued throughout all that transition.
Yeah, and that's the banner. And I just want to say that the Global Peace Tribe is still Deborah and myself. Technically, we're the co-founders of Global Peace Tribe. And although Deborah is primarily working on her health right now, but of course she just did the wonderful series with you, Alan, the Making Contact series. Yes. And I know that she's looking at doing other short series like that.
She is a fantastic executive. I mean, she just kept me going. She made me become an executive on her level, and it was fantastic. She's truly a remarkable person. And she had all that training from the Harmony festivals for 30 years. So you two being old friends, it was really a perfect combination to launch this to our community that exactly knew everyone. Yeah.
And what an amazing gift, Scott. I just wanted to say, like this, what the show that you continue to do as well. It's an amazing gift, bringing forth all of these luminaries, bringing forth all of these new leaders in the spirituality and awakening consciousness movement. And, when I was getting ready for just this interview today with you and Alan, I was just thinking, wow, like what a beautiful meeting of our soul tribe, coming together, because, we're all here with this mission, and you and Alan have been doing this for so long on so many levels. And just, I'm so excited that we're now all together, and with people like Deborah and others as well. Just, really excited to see what else is going to be coming forth from all of these.
Well, I want to ask Scott how he does it 3 days a week. That's one of these a week is exhausting, but how do you do it? What is it that feeds you to do this, to sit in front of a computer for hours on a weekend and just do that? How?
Well, thank you. And there are a couple of things. First of all, I'm really grateful to have an extremely healthy body. I'm really blessed. I don't have any significant health issues. And I'm, when my wife was still alive, even though she was younger than me, she was 5 years younger, she used to say, Scott, you need to be with a woman in her 30s because she's so ambitious and you have so much you need to do. I was in my 50s at the time. And I just have a lot of energy, and I am 66 going on 35 in certain ways. I still have the ambition that I had when in my 30s. I am blessed with a really healthy body. So I want to start by saying I'm really fortunate that way, really fortunate. The second thing is that I'm single, right? And I miss having a girlfriend, and I look forward to attracting the right partner.
Everyone out there watching, take note.
If and when the time is right, and it's got to be somebody, but you know what? I'm very discerning now. It's got to be somebody who's very emotionally intelligent, someone who's done their work, You know, they're not looking to be saved or rescued, but someone who's got a really strong, healthy connection to divinity, connection to themselves, and someone who's willing to tolerate being with a man who's very ambitious, you know, and who wants to, you know, be a support to that and be a part of that, you know, absolutely. And I do love well, you know, when I am in relationship, I go deep. And so I know that, so I need to be careful because I've had deep love relationships that were wonderful and healthy. And I've also had deep love relationships that weren't, that became a big distraction from my purpose. You know, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like to teach about unhealthy enmeshment and toxic relationship and wound mates, because I've had wound mate relationships where the sex is really great, but we're off track and we're holding each other back and we're lost in drama. I've done that. And I'm not willing to ever do that again. And I've also known what it's like when I was married to Psyche. And actually I had also a relationship after Psyche that was very healthy and very productive. So I'm very discerning now about that. But hey, when the time is right and the person shows up, I will be very happy. Very, very grateful.
Well, I know whatever that it will be, but what about, where's your vision going now? You've done the Global Peace Tribe. It's been incredibly successful. Give us something else on the horizon that you're bringing through.
And what do you also see is coming through in terms of consciousness? Like what, you know, you've been seeing this development of consciousness for decades now. And, you know, now, you know, things that you're presenting on now, you know, multidimensionality, you know, connection with galactics, you know, all of these different levels, you know, so where do you see everything evolving, and how do you see yourself fitting in here as a continued messenger, you know, for everyone?
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think the shit's going to really hit the fan. I think that our planet is just beginning a very, very difficult period. Because I do a lot of environmental work and I'm closely connected to, you know, I was trained by Al Gore, that's a whole other story, but I was trained by Al Gore 11 years ago, and I've been very tight knit with the climate crisis community for a long time. And 10 years ago, the people in the know were saying, we're past the tipping point. We're past it. So the planet's going to go through enormous change. And there's going to be enormous physical change, enormous economic change. You know, who would have thought there's going to be a war in Europe? Who would have thought that would happen? So there's going to be a lot of hard things that are going to happen. And it's not bad, but it's really going to be hard and very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And there'll be a lot of death, and there'll be a lot of change, and there'll be a lot of transition. And the tools that we are so blessed to have, we are so blessed. First of all, we are wealthy people living in America. So we're pretty safe. And even more important than that, we have the tools. We have the tools that Alan and Tanjila and I and probably everybody watching is aware of, whether it's yoga, consciousness, meditation, prayer. You know, we're blessed to have that, but much of the world doesn't. And much of the world is going to go through extreme disillusionment. Disillusionment in their political leaders, disillusionment in their religious upbringing, disillusionment and fear and survival. And when that's happening, the tools that we have and all of our friends and all of our compadres that teach all of the things that Melissa and Raquel and Krista, and I'm thinking some of our soul searchers, you know, have to offer, is going to become very important. I also believe, and this is where I'm going to go out on a limb, but I've had the vision for a long, long time that many of us are going to be right there when the very first galactic, like not just a little tiny disk in the sky, but when the very first big events start happening, we're going to be there. And I've been getting for a long time, it's going to be in Sedona.
That's what I got just recently, 2024, Scott.
Is it 2024 is when you got it? I haven't gotten a date, but as long as 30 years ago, I saw myself, just like I saw Psyche dying, I saw myself in Sedona with community, with a number of friends. The ship comes, the video cameras capture it, it becomes a worldwide thing. And now all of a sudden, those of us that have been doing all of this, everybody wants to see new realities and all that Alan did. Everybody wants to know what is this soul search that Tanjila was doing? What is it that this crazy guy, Scott Katamas, has been talking about for all these years? It's going to give us, maybe something will happen before then, but that's what's going to give us a tremendous notoriety. And not just the three of us, but whoever else is there at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, that is when the world changes in the next level, in the ascension, and whatever we want to call what we're all working towards, this unity of consciousness. It is happening. And
Exactly. And Alan, that's such a beautiful segue, because Scott is one of our soul search and ascension experts, and he is one of our speakers at the Ascension of the Soul conference that we're hosting online October 15th and 16th. And I just want to say that the reason we chose that topic is because of this exact thing. We are all here, every one of us is here for this movement into the unity of consciousness. And Scott, as you've been describing this entire show, you have this incredible experience of really taking step by step this movement for yourself and seeing and understanding what's happening with the world. And as a result, being in such a unique place to truly serve as a guide through this period, which is what we're in already. And, we just did speak to Alan, and I did speak to Raquel earlier this week, and she did say 2024 is going to be a game-changing year for all of us. And there's a lot that we can expect to happen, and a lot is going to be shifting, and ascension guides like you and like Alan are going to be more important than ever before. And to be honest, the majority of the world has never even heard of the word ascension. And they don't know what it is.
What Raquel said is it's when Pluto enters Aquarius. That's a time of this next level of awakening, let's say. Yeah, Scott.
And so one of the things we wanted to have, Ascension Conference about was just to start introducing more and more people to understanding what this is in every aspect. And so, Scott, you're here as one of our Ascension guides and experts on every level, really, which is incredible. Thank you.
So in a moment, I'll show the video and we'll talk about the amazing thing you guys are putting together. But before I do that, I want to mention one other thing about Ascension.
Wow.
It's the other part of the question that you asked about what do I see happening. A lot of historically, there has been times when all of a sudden entire cultures disappeared. The Mayans, like what happened? And they just were gone. They ascended. And I want to say that ascension can happen in many ways. Psyche ascended when she died. We all ascend when we die. Then there are also moments of ascension that where an entire group of people transition. There's also ascension in that we are living in parallel universes. I didn't go into this, but I had an experience in my life, non-drug induced, there were no drugs involved, where I stepped into a parallel reality and experienced in a body, very much awake, that an alternate Scott, a parallel universe Scott, where I made a different choice and my life went in a different direction. So, and quantum physics is explaining this, and we're seeing more and more movies. The whole Marvel which is the most popular franchise of films in the world right now, is all about the multi-universe, the multiverse. So we're beginning to really understand that this is kind of how it works. So there's ascension in many levels. Some of us will ascend by dying. Some of us will ascend by shifting into a parallel reality. And there may be a moment where there's something cataclysmic that happens and different soul groups experience the earth and their relationship to the earth in different ways. And I've seen that personally, and I've had many of the prophets or the spiritual teachers that I respect also share that as visionaries, they've seen that as a future for many of us. So I wanted to mention that.
That's fascinating, Scott.
It's coming, and we can all feel, and that's why we're coming. That's what the global peace tribe is all about, really. It's about a collective wave that's happening.
Exactly. And I love how you mentioned how the Marvel movies are also bringing this aspect of multidimensionality into the collective consciousness, so that younger people who are watching these, it's really something that people are embracing now, from Lord of the Rings to Marvel. It's a different level of consciousness that's now much more aware of these aspects that, you have been aware of through your own personal experiences. But even, the spiritual teachers that are very prevalent for the last 30, 40 years have not really often gone down that road in exploration of consciousness at that level. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on why that was. I know it's going to get long, but I just was curious to have your thoughts on that.
Here's why I want to acknowledge both of you, because both of you and myself, we all are really putting it out there. And I want to also acknowledge that all three of us are choosing to go into ascension and raising of consciousness as opposed to political activism. And I respect my friends that are politically active, and that's, it's a powerful choice. But we're all about a movement toward what we want, as opposed to a movement against what we're angry at.
I agree. I've never been drawn to political activism because I think it starts with us and the right movement. Instead of being angry about what's out there, change yourself and you change the world. I mean, I think we're all in agreement with that. So thank you.
Michael Beckwith really helped me with that 30 years ago. He and I were in Jamaica together, and we were having a conversation. And at the time, I was more kind of on the edge of political activism because I had just done the Men in Love movie, and I'd really it was a very activist time in my life. And Michael said, you don't have to fight against the establishment. It will break down on its own. Any system that is corrupt or outdated will just naturally die. Let's work on building the new paradigm. Let's work on building what next. And that really, 30 years ago is when I heard that, and it really stuck with me.
I completely agree. And I was a political activist for a long time as well, very active and very important to me. But this movement is when we're bringing forth the new earth, where we're creating,
and a great introduction to your big show coming up. Why don't we show that?
Exactly. Perfect.
All right. So here is a video all about this incredible thing that Tanjila and Neil Gar and Alan are putting together, which I'm a part of.
Yes. Thanks, Scott.
What are your gifts? What do you desire for yourself? What do you envision for the entire planet? Immerse yourself into the Ascension of the Soul online 2-day conference. Explore your soul's purpose and experience deep connection to all that you are. A collaboration of luminaries here to support you in understanding and remembering your true potential. Brought to you by Soul Search and Portal to Ascension. Now is the time to awaken to our soul's gifts and abilities. Join us October 15th and 16th, 2022.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for playing that.
Yeah, well, now I get to flip into where I'm more comfortable, which is talking about interviewing.
Well, we're excited to have you be a part of this summit. And I just want to let everyone know that Scott's topic is managing our animal bodies during ascension. And Scott, that is a very intriguing topic that you could just tell us a little bit about what that means for you and for all of us.
Well, often one of the mistakes that I believe a lot of people make is they're so eager to get out of their body. How many times have we heard our spiritual friends say, God, I want this to be my last life. Oh, I can't wait to get out of my body. And I honestly, my wife was really she was so eager to be out of her body that she died, which was not a bad thing. She's happier there than she was here. But I strongly believe that actually it's about being fully in the body, because I've done a lot of communication with people that have passed. I've done a lot of near-death experience shows, just like Alan has. And most people, once they get there and they're grateful, then they go, oh, wow, you know what? The human experience is so unique. Enjoy it while you're there. And being a spiritual being in an animal body, and we are in animal bodies, part of that's really hard, but boy, there's nothing like food, right? There's nothing like sex. You know what's interesting? Food and sex, because we're in animal bodies, are really incredible. And notice that those are the two things that human beings tend to be most messed up about, right? Food and sex, how to balance it, how to balance how good food feels, how to balance how good sex feels, right? And so we are in animal bodies, and we get primal, we get ravenous. And sometimes the animal body needs food, needs sex, or needs understanding. This is the Marshall Rosenberg part. Needs connection, needs respect, needs to be understood. So we can't ignore our animal body. And more for deep healing, because all three of us, obviously we work with world-class healers, and most world-class healers have understood there's got to be a somatic part to the healing, right? PTSD cannot be resolved through talk therapy. PTSD requires some sort of somatic healing because we store the memory in our cells. So as those of us that are attracted to ascension, great, I want to talk about how can we want to ascend, but not ignore our human body. In fact, honoring the body, honoring our animal body, working with the animal body in conjunction with that longing for ascension.
My spiritual teacher said, everyone wants to ascend and no one wants to live. Ascension comes from a life well lived. So this is the Ramtha teachings, when you own the human experience, when you can look at everyone and say, I know what that person's feeling, I felt that, I've been that, then you kind of resolve the wheel of karma and you ignite, this is my interpretation, the biophotonic potentials in the cell, and then you start to vibrate. I mean, look at someone like Raquel. She's been through incredible stuff and she's full of joy. She's joyous. That's an ascended being incarnate. That's just a miracle there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Raquel's a great example. And of course, I got to point to the Twin Ray. I've been around the block. I didn't even talk about my 11 years of running the camp at Jane Fonda's Ranch, where I met everyone from Paul Newman to Cher to Sean Connery. So I've met a lot of famous people, a lot of powerful people. The Twin Ray are the highest vibration beings that I've spent time with, that I've been able to really hang out with. And they're exactly what you're just describing. They are living in 5D, but they're always joyful. They're always grateful. They're always loving. They're always generous. Always. I lived with them for a week in their home. I saw them all throughout the day and the evening. They're always like that. And so it's not about, oh my God, I'm so angry, I want to be out of my body. It's like learning to fully embrace the beauty of life. And that includes being present to discomfort, being present to the sadness, and that's where compassion comes in, right?
Well, the incarnate experience is just a magical thing. You're right. Eating, sex, swimming. I've been swimming in the morning. And there's a clarity that comes when I'm swimming in a pool or an ocean. It doesn't matter. It's just by myself, looking at the sunrise. Sometimes it's like, wow, that's a moment of blissful presence. And that feels so good embodied. So I totally agree. That's the road to ascension.
Exactly.
So tell your friends that.
I love that. So I love your topic. I'm so super excited for your talk, Scott. And I just think it's going to be such an incredible download for everyone because it's so true. Like this, our human incarnated experience, it's priceless, you know, and this is a part of ascension, being grateful and celebratory of all that we can do as human beings, you know, not just ethereal beings. So super excited and so grateful for you to be a part of everything with us.
Yes, tell us what.
Tell us about some of the people that are going to be there, and I've got the poster up for you.
We have, you know, we've got everyone on here, including Neil Gar, Deborah Giusti, Melissa Fike, Raquel Spring, who we mentioned earlier. We have all types of different healers, channeling, Akashic records, manifestation, quantum psychology, multidimensional healing. So we have so many different aspects that are going to be addressed by all of our incredible healers here. Shadow work, dark night of the soul. So people will be really delving into all of these different aspects of what it means to be in the ascension process. So we're really excited. And we're just thrilled to have you be a part of it. And of course, part of Soul Search and just all of the collaborations we're planning together. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about another exciting event coming up in Sedona that you are hosting.
Yeah, I really want to invite everybody, even if you've heard about it and you said, no, I can't do it, find a way to do it. Who knows, maybe this will be, now Alan said 2024, but you never know. Maybe this will be when we get our first connection. So of course I am referring to our upcoming retreat in Sedona. And it's going to be amazing. Deborah Giusti and Tanjila and Omashar and Krista and Nicole, the 5 people you saw in the photos, they're all going to be there, but many, many, many other friends of ours, people that we love, are going to be there. And it's going to be a time for us to really come together. It's built around this super conscious music festival that Tanjila and Neil are doing. There's a psychic fair happening. We're going to spend time in nature together. We're going to share meals together. We're going to have about a dozen different play shops where a lot of your favorite soul search teachers and other teachers are going to come in. And I hopefully by next week we'll be able to make a fun announcement because I think we're going to have a very special guest joining us. Somebody you've seen on The Awakening World that's a bit of a celebrity. I'm working on that. So it's going to be amazing. And, you know, as Jesus said, where 2 or more are gathered. So imagine what it's going to be like being with 30, 40, 50 global peace tribers praying together, healing each other. Somebody's got a healing thing. So many people like Raquel and a lot of the soul search people that are going to be there. Alan, are you coming? I hope to God you're going to be there, buddy.
I have to work that out because we're doing a lot of stuff and I have my next book I'm working on. So let me see what I can do. But thank you.
Alan, we want Alan to be there.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
Thank you. The
All right, let's see how it unfolds. But I appreciate that. But this is only the first. This is not the last of your gatherings.
No, there definitely will be other ones, but this one needs to be successful enough for there to be other ones, you know. So there's that too.
It will. But I also want to ask, beyond that and all that, where are you looking towards as a broadcaster, as a, you know, a community leader? What do you think?
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's interesting. I'm pretty open right now, to be really honest. I live my life now in where spirit sends me. And I am in a bit of a contemplation of, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next big thing? And, you know, I love doing Love Coach Academy stuff. I love doing Global Peace Tribe stuff. Last week, my good friend Lucky invited me to travel around the world with him, and he's willing to pick up the tab for it. So
if you can't make it, Scott, I'll go.
have responsibilities too, Alan. So I'm really contemplating on what does that look like, and how long would I want to go for, and what would I do, and how would I still maintain doing the awakening world during that time? So to be really honest, I'm in a time of reflection and really listening to, okay, what's next? You know, I was going to take the summer off. And I was going to take the summer off and kind of travel. And I received 150 messages by email, by text, during the Zoom shows, for people saying, Scott, can you keep it going in some way? And it really made an impression on me. It's like, okay, energetically, just like Deborah and I heard the call when the pandemic hit, I heard the call then. People really wanted this to continue through the summer. And so, you know, and then I thought I'd do all replays, and I haven't. I've really done a lot of original shows. Thank you, Soul Search. So many of the wonderful people that I've been collaborating with have been through Soul Search.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
and the
you
people,
for bringing everyone forth, you know, and bringing through a new generation of multidimensional guides, you know, because that's really what this is all about. It's no longer about the spiritual teacher, but multidimensional guides that are here just to be, you know, speaking about where we are in our evolution and providing tools in support of that.
I was going to say, if you people are new to this, Scott does the show Friday, Saturday night, and Sunday morning, 3/9. You can look for that on all the channels you're watching now. So
Exactly.
it's
Scott, if you
ongoing.
want to just go through the dates and the times, and also let everyone know about your practice, your thriving coaching practice and Love Coach Academy. And if you are having any issues with your relationship, whether it's love, business, or otherwise, you know, Scott, you deal with all types of relationship issues, right?
Yeah, that's my day job. I don't make really the money that comes in for registrations for Global Peace Tribe goes right out for the posters and to Unify and to the expenses that I have, my VAs that help put those things together. So really, I make my living coaching, and I do have a thriving practice. I probably have room maybe for two new clients. I really try and keep it to 2 or 3 sessions a day. And then I take a couple of days a week off to just pretty much weekends. I just do Global Peace Tribe and Awakening World. But if anybody is interested in getting coaching, you can do a couple of things. You can send me an email. It's SC, my initials, sc@lovecoachscott.com, sc@lovecoachscott.com. Or you can send me a Facebook private message, or you can go to lovecoachacademy.com. I think I've got that queued up. Let me bring that up. If you go to lovecoachacademy.com, which is one of my websites, and you scroll down, if you come back, at first you'll see actually that's an old poster that needs to be replaced. But if you come down, there's a survey that you can fulfill. And you just fill out the survey, and I'll provide you with a free 15-minute consultation for filling out the survey. So that's a way, if you're interested in getting coaching with me, send me a private message, email me, or fill out the survey.
And talk about how to sign up for the Global Peace Tribe. Just talk about that.
Okay, so to sign up for the Global Peace Tribe, which I really hope anybody and everybody watching, we have an amazing community we're building. Imagine people like Tanjila and Alan and all the incredible soul search people that you've been seeing lately, and just an amazing group of people of all ages, millennials, Gen X's, baby boomers, Twin Ray. The way to get connected is go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com. And there's a lot you can learn all about our different shows, learn about the different events, see all the different people that we work with, and then register to get the links to all of our Zoom rooms. We do 3 shows every weekend, and sometimes extras, like this is an extra show. I did an extra show yesterday morning with the Twin Ray. But for example, this weekend, our theme was relationship as a spiritual practice. So on Friday night, we had this amazing evening with Raquel, who is well on her way to enlightenment. Then on Saturday night, we had several people, including David Formalin Meaton, Gay and Katie Hendrick, Satyan and Susan Raja, my co-host through Soul Search, Krista Collins, making her debut as a co-host, and she did a really good job, Tanjila. You'd be proud of her.
No doubt, no doubt.
Continued it on today. So, there's all these shows that we do. Register, it takes about 2 minutes. You get the links to all of our shows, plus you get on our email list, and we send you notifications about extra shows like this one, or the one I did with the Twin Ray yesterday. You'll get replays of our shows. And basically, you become part of the Global Peace Tribe. And we are all ascending together. We are all collaborating, and we need each other. It's all taking hands and doing this together.
Yeah. And that is the Aquarian age, as Raquel said. We are moving. This is evidence that it's real. It's happening. And maybe the pandemic has pulled us together in non-local ways to bring our community even more aware of what's possible. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Thank you, Scott. I should go
so much, Scott. Amazing. This was an incredible interview. Loved hearing everything about your incredible life. I know we had a lot of other questions that people had written, but it's to be continued because obviously there was many things we didn't get a chance to hear about. Jane Fonda's ranch, your ET experiences. So
you gave us the core of like the inner journey, Scott, and I really appreciate that. It was like what your heart went through as you evolved to this point. It was beautiful. I didn't expect to be moved so much because I know you and it's like I've heard, but it was really very nice. Beautiful.
Really very powerful, Scott. And what a powerful example of a guide during this ascension process. Someone who has been there, someone who walks the walk, doesn't just talk the talk. You're here walking the walk, and here to have many more walk with you. So thank you so much for all that you do. We're really blessed and grateful to have you as our visionary and community leader. So thank you so much. And thank you, Alan, as well, for all of your leadership.
Tanjila, I have to say, you've become a superstar. She never really was on camera before. She just, I saw one of the first shows, and that is a natural there. She just is so poised, and she is. And joyful, look at on camera. I mean, everything. You are, it's great to work.
She and Raquel are both stars. Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to acknowledge the people in our Zoom room.
Yes.
And we didn't get a chance to really, so I will save I've saved the chat. And I will do my best. If you guys want to send me messages on Facebook, I'll respond to you, because I saw that there's a lot of stuff going on in our chat box, and I really appreciate that. All of our friends, and I recognize almost all of them are people that are regulars on Global Peace Tribe and Awakening World, and I just really appreciate that you took time on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening to kind of be here. And I felt your love and your support, and I feel a little guilty that we didn't give you more attention. So,
well, I just want to read what Katie Tucker on the YouTube channel, my New Realities YouTube, which hosts the Global Peace Tribe 3 times. She says, holding space is such an important job. I'm beyond grateful for your service and beyond elated to be part of your space. Brightest blessings and love. Heart. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yes. And Dorina says, thank you for all that you do, all that you are, and all that you transform in the most amazing way. Maximum grace, no matter where, what, and how. Blessings, gratitude, and love. And so many comments coming in. This has been fantastic from Mark Denisovsky. Thanks for revealing your history, Scott. The wizard has come out from behind the curtain.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we will do it again.
Definitely. To be continued, Scott.
To be continued. And next weekend on the Awakening World, it's going to be fun. Unsung Heroes Creating the New Paradigm is our theme. Unsung Heroes Creating the New Paradigm. So
I know who those unsung heroes are.
Well, you'll have to tune in next weekend.
I will.
Okay, well,
thank you, Alan, for carrying the Awakening World every week. All 3 shows on New Realities. And You know, Alan's YouTube channel is amazing. He's got amazing interviews there. So definitely.
My 80,000 subscribers, I guess, think so too. So, you know, and I'm really been happy for 2 years I've been carrying that. So it's increased my viewership as well. I'm not just selflessly doing it, although I am, but it's also increasing my awareness. So,
Yeah, when we first started, you were at 50,000. Now you're at 80,000. So
yes, isn't that great?
it's cool. It's very cool.
So we'll talk about when I want to host it again. Should we end
Yeah,
it?
after this ends, let's stick around for a moment.
Are we ended yet? Or are we still?
We haven't ended yet, but we will when you're ready. I guess we're gonna say goodbye to all of our friends, and I'm gonna.
Everyone watching.
Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for being.
We love you guys, and thank you for sharing this experience with Scott. It's been transformational for me, and I'm sure for all of us watching. And thank you to Scott and Alan, and thank you, Scott, for being so open and just sharing with us your experiences. It's beautiful, beautiful.
My pleasure.